Hi, this is the Thaiger in Thailand, and today we're with Bill Heinecke, who's the president and founder of, actually the chairman and founder of Miner International. Bill, welcome to the Thaiger.
No, thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
We live in interesting times, I think. One of the big questions, recently we saw your comments talking about Thailand, if it's not going to reopen, being toast, Tell us a little more about that comment in terms of this. Are we really headed into an unknown area now for hotels, and is it going to be that bad?
I think if we don't open up, it's going to be extremely difficult. I don't think anyone really appreciated how important tourism is, not just to the hotel sector, but to all the other sectors, whether it be the farmers in the north or the vendors in the south, or it's all interconnected, and truly, I think the economy will not be able to recover if we don't open up. And I think it's absolutely critical that the government now, having conquered COVID, you might say, realizes they now have to find a way to open up safely, maintain this excellent record that Thailand has for fighting COVID, but at the same time recognize that the economy has to recover. So,
I think, interesting enough, I know you've been very vocal recently about reopening Thailand. And I know back in March you wrote a letter to the government saying we should close the borders. Do you find that contradictory, or was it a sign of the times, or what's the story with that?
Well, I think at that time it was very important to close the borders and to protect Thailand. And I think the record for Thailand compared to most parts of the world is excellent. I think where we now are suffering is that we've seen other countries that have either stayed open or have reopened, now seeing their economies recover much better and perform much better than we did. So I think now it's just a question that we have to find the ability to open safely. And I think with so many countries also performing well against COVID, such as Taiwan, I think Hong Kong, China especially, and soon Singapore. They've all recovered from their second wave. We still have areas like Malaysia which are still suffering from problems. India is there's no question, is not one of the low-risk countries. So I'm in favor of trying to work with the low-risk countries and open up Thailand. But you can't open it up with a quarantine. You've got to find a way to open it up with the need for 2 tests. We've now handled many guests through our ASQ hotels. And it's incredible, but we've only had 3 cases on the second test being positive, and that means that we're quarantining thousands of people to recover, to get 3. And that record is being performed almost throughout Thailand. The only time that Thailand really gets a large number of positive COVID cases is when there's no test done, such as all the repatriation flights of Thais coming back from abroad. They're not required to have a test before boarding. Virtually all of our guests have a test before coming to Thailand and a test when they arrive in Thailand. And after that, more than 99% test negative to this disease.
And it's interesting, in our business we always try to find historical paradigms, and we always say, what's the new normal? But going backwards, we've all got enough gray hair here to say 1997, what we've learned, SARS, global financial crisis. With COVID-19, is this anything you've seen before? How do we say our present situation, or try to sum that up?
Every crisis before this was a walk in the park. This is certainly the most serious crisis that I've ever seen for Thailand, for the economy, and perhaps even for the political leadership. So it's going to be interesting to see how we can overcome this. Okay. But remember, Thailand has always persevered. As long as we've both been here,
sure.
There's always a sun that shines through after the rainstorm.
I think there's a lot of questioning, is more better now about tourism and just tourism in general, not only in Thailand but globally. When we look at Thailand, up to 20% of GDP, do you think that that's going to remain the case going forward? Is that market going to come back? And what's the right mix of tourism to the economy, really?
I think that we have to accept that some economies are more dependent on tourism than others. We see this in Spain, we see this in Thailand, we see this in other parts of the world. China is not very heavily dependent on tourism. Their domestic tourism has resulted in the fact that China is now showing numbers, both for their hotel sector as well as their general economy, that were stronger than pre-COVID. So they've recovered completely, and that's the fundamentals of a very strong economy. I think the one thing that Thailand must do is open up as soon as possible to the Chinese. This is a country that has taken the COVID situation so aggressively and rid themselves of it. And I think, to me, if I had to pick one country I would be happy to live in or go to and fight or be against COVID, I would be happy in China. I think they really know what they're doing, and they've demonstrated to the world how to combat it.
Sure. I think one interesting thing, our industry relies heavily on labor, certainly, as more so than Asia. You know, with hotels traditionally haven't been able to stack up labor costs here. Do you think this is going to be a dynamic shift going forward, where we're looking at just the reduction of manpower in the hotels you operate, you know, within our industry? You know, is it going to start mimic, is the East the new West in terms of labor costs? Is it going to have to adapt those measures going forward?
You know, I think every other industry that I've been involved with, especially the food industry, they've already adapted. You know, 75% of our workforce is part-time. Our food business was able to pivot on this crisis much more quickly than our hotel business. The hotel business has resulted in a number of furloughs, a number of people that have laid off, and I think the new norm will certainly be running hotels more efficiently than ever before. But you know, efficiency is relative insofar as I think that Asia has generally run more profitable hotels than Europe or the US in the past. And I think they're going to have to become more economical in their operations if they're going to be able to survive in the new norm. I believe the hotels, we've seen it in our own hotels, the break-even rates are coming down much more dramatically. We don't need to return to a pre-2019 tourism number to make the same money. We're going to be more efficient this time around.
I think one interesting thing is we talked to STR as well, and they're saying 3 to 4 year recovery. There's a lot of conjecture out there in terms of a return, not necessarily to where it was, but a return to typical operations. Do you think it's going to take 2 or 3 years for the country to rebound with tourism, or how long do you think it's going to be?
I think it depends on how quickly they open up. If they take this opportunity now to open up to low-risk countries like much of Southeast Asia, I think we can begin to see a recovery next year. If we don't open up, and then I think it's going to take much longer, and that's going to be painful.
One interesting thing, you know, within any downturn in the business, we always say who's going to recover first, which segment's going to recover. It's always the issue of brands versus non-branded. I know you've got your own minor brands, you know, brand stable there, which is very significant, and then you also have internationally branded global tiers as well. Who do you think are going to be the winners coming out of this typically?
Well, I think I think our owners, for the most part, have appreciated how fast we've been able to respond to this crisis. We have the opportunity of working with many of the international brands. I think it's fair to say that they've not been able to react as quickly as we would have liked, perhaps because they're not based in Thailand, perhaps because they're based in economies that have remained open or had more difficulties with COVID. I don't know, but I would honestly say that we were extremely disappointed at the lack of ability to respond to this crisis that we saw from many of our overseas partners.
Okay. Any advice? I mean, you're a skilled hotel owner. There's a lot of new businesses involved in tourism here in Thailand, owning hotels as well. You know, what's your top your top advice for a hotel owner now, you know, in terms of owning a property and saying what the future? Is it still a good investment to own hotels in Thailand?
I think it depends very much on the operator. You know, I think hotels, at the end of the day, no matter what brand is on them, is only as good as the management running them.
Yeah. I think today, you know, as we kind of wrap this up, we're in Phuket. You've been a pioneer here in Phuket with your JW Marriott in Macau, certainly moving geography here as well. You know, Phuket's built up an incredible, we're at over 88,000 hotel keys now, certainly in the registered supply line. What do you think the future of Phuket is? Is there still room for Phuket to grow, and is it solid in terms of a tourism profile?
Yes, I believe Phuket is solid, and I believe it has lots of room to grow. But I think right now you have to realize that the impact of this has meant that basically almost 1 out of every 2 people in Phuket are either unemployed or underemployed. So that's how bad it's hit Phuket. probably the worst province in all of Thailand has suffered, because we depend much more in Phuket than even markets like Samui or Pattaya on the tourism sector.
Yeah. Maybe one final question before we go. COVID's given us time to kind of take a time out and to kind of examine ourselves and examine our businesses and everything else. What have you learned about your business or learned about yourself during this time? What has it given you an opportunity, aside from the crisis and the business crisis at hand, to actually have a positive outcome? What do you see the positive outcome of COVID-19 being?
I think it's going to teach the world a little bit of how interconnected we are, how fragile the whole world is. I think that hopefully every country will come out of this stronger. I think that Thailand especially is going through some real challenges at this moment, which will make it even more difficult for them to face the priorities that they have to face. So I think what keeps me going is that I'm an optimist, and I've lived most of my life in Thailand, and I've seen Thailand come through incredible challenges, always stronger. Yeah. And I still have faith that Thailand's going to do that again.
Bill Heinecke, thank you so much today, and we wish you well during this troubled time, but I think we're all going to come out of it stronger.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks, Bill.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Okay.